Welcome everybody to day 3 of ERP Suites AI week. Happy to be here, joined with a few colleagues and friends from Oracle. But before I introduce them, I want to quickly recap what has been 2 packed days of content, interactions with customers, feedback, intriguing questions, and lots of depth and breadth around artificial intelligence. Multiple keynotes and breakout sessions. And today is no different. We have another packed day, starting off with 2 keynotes from Oracle that we're very pleased to have. I'll introduce these gentlemen in just a moment, and several breakout sessions that will go throughout the day. So looking forward to another action-packed day. Lots of questions, interactions, discussions with customers. And with that, I will introduce our special guest today, Dmitry Baev, who is Group Vice President at Oracle, part of Cloud Engineering and Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and heads up the Center of Excellence for AI and ML. Welcome, Dmitry. Joining him are Raj Arora, who's Principal Cloud Architect at Oracle for generative AI, and also a member of the Center of Excellence team that Dmitry runs, and Bishwa Nanda, Master Principal Cloud Architect at ML and AI, and also a member of the Center of Excellence. So we have some very expert people here, and it's a pleasure to have you all. And they're going to be talking about some very cool technology that they've produced to really take kind of natural language conversations to the next level and be able to get data insights like you've never seen before. So over to you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for presenting today.
Thanks, Manuel. Thanks for the intro. Can you just confirm that you can still hear my voice and see my screen?
Yes, you're loud and clear, and I can see your slides. Thank you, sir.
All right, awesome. Folks, thank you for having us on the call today. So Dmitry Baev, Group Vice President for Data and AI Practice with Oracle Cloud, and joined by 2 of my team members, Raj and Bishwa. The topic for today, and we're going to spend a few minutes up front, and then we're gonna actually jump into a live demo, is talking about conversational AI. So in the last 9 to 12 months, when many customers start dipping their toes into generative AI and looking at use cases of bringing generative AI to enterprise class use cases and driving business value, conversational AI very quickly jumped to the top of the list. And the idea behind generative AI to be able to interact with your enterprise data. Obviously, being Oracle, we have long-standing and we have a very rich ecosystem of database products, various Oracle applications, packaged applications such as JD Edwards, EBS, PeopleSoft, many business applications, as well as many of our partners, ISVs, and customers choose to build their own applications on top of the Oracle database. And one of the consistent asks that we've been getting is, well, how do I use generative AI to be able to talk to my data? If I'm a business user and I want to be able to ask natural language questions, ad hoc questions against data sitting in JD Edwards, in EBS, in PeopleSoft, in other applications built on top of the Oracle database, as well as not just Oracle database. It could be, Snowflake, it could be Postgre, it could be MySQL, it can be Teradata, really any relational data store out there. How do I do that? Especially if I'm a line of a business user within a line of business, and I don't want to rely on my IT folks to extract the data, to munch the data, build a full pipeline, bring it into a dashboard, work with a BI engineer to build that dashboard. And then that cycle repeats itself, because every time you get to some sort of an insight, you want to start looking at this data in a different way. So as a business person, you're always chasing those insights, and you always have to go rely on somebody else, waiting for them to do the work before you can actually start looking at the data or the insights the way that you would like to do that. And that was a clear signal for us to build Oracle Ask Data as a conversational AI platform that can be plugged into pretty much any data source, but certainly the Oracle ecosystem, JD Edwards, PeopleSoft, EBS, and so on and so forth, and to ensure that our customers can have truly natural language conversation with their data. And in doing so, we really look at two aspects. First of all, from a business user perspective, we wanted to make sure that business users can really have a natural language conversation with your data, meaning that you don't need to be a SQL expert. You don't need to understand the data model. You don't need to really understand where the data is coming from. You probably need to be aware of the domain of your data. So if you're asking about invoices, about payables, about receivables, about supply chain, about resource planning, you probably need to be aware of some generic domain knowledge about the data source, where it's coming from. But it's really as simple as that. On the other side, while business users are interacting with the data in real time using conversational AI, we wanted to make sure that we're also providing AI governance, visibility, security, and full auditability. Because the thing with structured data, and for those folks who have, who had a chance to play with AI and generative AI, you probably heard of a concept called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. So RAG is a great technique when it comes to unstructured data, right? And when you have a RAG-based application, it relies on what's called vectors to find data based on vector search, and then it pulls that data and it constructs a response to your question based on the data that it finds. But that response is usually, it could be a sentence, could be a paragraph, could be a full page, with some references and annotations to where that original piece of data came from. In dealing with unstructured data using retrieval augmented generation technique, you are still relying on the human being to read that response, right? Whether it's a paragraph or whether it's a page long, the human being is reading the response. He or she is interpreting that response and sort of making their decision based on their understanding of whatever was generated. But when you look at natural language to SQL, that is the technique NL to SQL, and if I ask a question such as, what were my sales for part ABC in the last 30 days in such and such store or in such and such region, I don't want the model to give me any kind of approximation or hallucination or estimation. I need the model to give me an exact number, which comes from an authoritative data source. And that's why building this AI governance and the trust framework was so important for us as part of this solution. So if I look at what we've built, and you will see this in a live demo here in a second, is you have two parts with two personas in mind. On the right-hand side, you've got business user, and you will have, as part of the demo, Bishwa is going to be our business user for the demo today. He will be interacting with a chat UI. In this case, we're going to be looking at a very simple web-based application you built using Oracle Visual Builder Cloud Services. And we'll have Oracle Digital Assistant as a chatbot component embedded inside of that UI application. Now, this is just an example. We have customers who have deployed the solution in production. They've integrated with Microsoft Teams, with Slack. They built their own custom UI using JavaScript technologies, or they have integrated this directly into their applications, such as JD Edwards, because everything behind the scenes is API based. So essentially, you can put any front-end UI. If you wanted to have this directly inside of your JD Edwards application, you could do that just as well. The NL to SQL engine, which is really the brains of the solution and is responsible for taking that natural language prompt, understanding the data domain, understanding the schema of your data, and constructing the SQL statement that would then pass through an authorization layer to ensure that me as a business user, or in this case, Bishwa, who's going to be doing the demo for us, has the right access permissions to go look at that data. In other words, if let's say I ask the question, show me my sales for the last 30 days, Bishwa asked that same question, and maybe Raj asked that same question, we should all get data that is relevant to our user as it relates to data access permissions. So the data may be scoped by by a salesperson, user ID. It may be scoped by a region. It may be scoped by some other predicate. So authorization framework ensures that you can fully implement table, row, column level security when it comes to accessing the data coming from that authoritative data source. So all that happens in real time. As I explained, the business user comes in and truly chats with their data using nothing but natural language. While that conversation is ongoing, every single interaction is getting logged, audited, and sent into the trust framework, where we have another user persona called expert or expert in the loop. And that person is responsible in offline mode. So that person can come in once a day or once a week or once a couple of weeks. That person is responsible for looking at all the prompts and SQL that was generated and executed and going through a lightweight verification and validation process, which again is fully automated. The idea there is that the person will look at the prompt, review the SQL that was generated, ensure that the SQL was correct, not just syntactically correct, because we take care of that as part of the SQL engine. So I would say it's almost 100% guaranteed that the SQL is syntactically correct, but you want to make sure that it's not only syntactically correct, but it also has the right business logic embedded when you ask a question such as, for instance, show me all my critical invoices for the last 30 days. So this notion of a critical invoice in this example may have a business nuance. And the way that you would implement this using SQL, it's not necessarily that you have a column in your data model that says, is critical true or false, right? There may be other things that need to be considered. So expert has the opportunity to read the prompt, examine the SQL, ensure that it has been generated correctly, validate it, or if it needs, it can actually provide a correction and ensure that the valid and corrected SQL is then passed through to the system. Behind the scenes, we employ a trust library. The trust library is the place that basically stores all the valid and verified forms of prompt, user prompts, and SQL pairs. The trust library is being used behind the scenes to ensure that the accuracy of the system continuously improves, right? So as the system runs and it gets more real examples from business users, we keep validating and we keep adding more and more of those examples into the trust library. And without getting too technical and too much into the weeds, there is also continuous fine-tuning of the large language model, which is one of the most critical aspects of the system and what really sets it apart. So every example, every conversation that goes between the business user and the As Data platform, both the valid as well as the corrected examples will be used to continuously fine-tune the large language models behind the scene. And by doing so, your large language model essentially adapts itself. It learns the environment, it learns the business lingo, it learns your data, it understands your metadata. So with the more the system is being used in real production environment, the better it becomes and the faster its accuracy will approach 100% or close to that. So with that in mind, let me jump forward here, and I will pass this to Bishwa and Raj to take us into the live demo. So on the right-hand side, you'll see an example of the chat UI. Again, in this case, we're using Oracle Digital Assistant, which is a chatbot that is very intuitive when it comes to having a conversation. Behind the scene, all the brains of the system is part of our NLP SQL engine, which takes the natural language prompt, converts it into SQL, executes that SQL against your enterprise data store, and then the results are being presented back, both in tabular as well as graphical formats if you choose. And then on the left-hand side, we have an example of the trust framework, which is built using Oracle Apex technology. And Apex is a extremely easy to use, low code, no code development environment, which sits directly on top of the Oracle database, 23AI. And that allows you to build very robust applications that essentially sit on top of the data that is stored inside of Oracle database 23AI. So with this in mind, let me pass this to Bishwa to kick us off with the demo, and then we'll come back, we'll look into more details around architecture and deployment of Oracle Ask Data. So Bishwa, I'm going to stop sharing and pass this over to you.
Let me share my screen quickly. Okay, so hope you guys are able to view my screen. So before we start with the demonstration, I would like to thank the ERP Suites team for helping us to build the demo environment, and it's been really pleasant working with the entire team. So in today's demonstration, I'll be acting as the business user. I'll be taking you through the cool Ask Data UI, and my colleague Raj will be acting as the business user, who will be acting as the expert user, who will be taking you through the trust framework what we have under the hoods. So to begin with the demonstration, in the scope of the demonstration, we have captured the JD Edwards data sets, and as you can see in this is the chatbot what we are talking about. This is integrated on the top of the Visual Builder, and as you can see on my screen, like we have got different domain functional areas, and these are again customizable. We have kept all the JD Edwards data sets inside this icon, but depending upon the business use case, you can always customize these tabs. Now let's start with executing some of the simple prompts. Okay, let's go with the first, which is the show all customers on credit hold. Let's see what the output comes out. Okay, so in the output, you can see the contact person, phone number, and email. So the for the conversation, what I've initiated, the LLM is returning this values out of JD Adverts, and also also here you have got couple of icons which I would like to explain. The first one is the explain. Now this helps you to know about where you are in the conversation and figure out what exactly LLM is answering back to you. So you can find a text where it explains what's the query is all about. And as I am the business user, so I will be having less SQL script like SQL knowledge. So this is good for me to evaluate the query at my level. And also we have got a SQL query. So for the output, what is the SQL being generated under the hood, you can see over there. And this is one of the places where you can view the SQL being generated as well. So let's proceed with a new conversation, and let's ask some other questions. So this is the show the list of back order SKUs, and as you can see, we are capturing the line number, description, and the back order quantity. So this is the output which is getting popped up, and here the most important part is like you can see a explanation mark which which has a small yellow color ribbon. So here, if I read this out, it mentions the query is yet to be clarified. Please use is it with caution until it is being certified by the admin. And as Dimitri covered earlier, the users will be having the capability to figure out the prompts in the trust library. So if a prompt is certified and registered in the trust library, it will the sign will get converted into green. So there is a process to do it, which I will be showcasing in my next prompts. But this is just to make you aware, like we also have a check to show whether the query is certified or not. Okay.
Also, just quickly, I want to interject, Biswa, right? That right next to that warning sign that Biswa just covered, you see that it's saying responding to, and then it has the prompt next to it. So this as well will be changed if you have a number of follow-up prompts. Then like if it becomes a very long conversation, so this as well keeps changing, and then it gives a sense to the user where he's at in the conversation. And as Biswa will be covering further, you will see how this responding to changes as you put in follow-up prompts.
Exactly. So let's execute another query where we can show some of the follow-up prompts. So here I'm trying to showcase the projected cash receipts. Uh, let the query run. Okay. Now, as a business analyst, what I can see is the customer names, the due date and due amount. And I see many of the customer names are getting repeated. And also there are some null values in my output. So as a subsequent conversation, I would like to have the total amount due for each customer listed separately. So let's see like what like if I ask the system what it does. Okay, so now you can see the fields have changed. Okay, and also I can see the queries which it is returning. And and based on this, like I can have some also, and I can ask the system to limit the output values as well. Let me do it quickly. Okay, so you can see it is restricting the output as well. Now there are a couple of more features over here. So if you want to see the tabular output, so this is the window where you can go, and you can see the customer names by the due amount. So suppose you want to search or filter out based on some customers, then you can also filter out using this icon. Okay, so this you can see this is working on a fly. So this is one of the feature being available.
So essentially, sorry, Vishwaja, quickly interject, right? Like in the chat interface, we don't want to display like too much data. It would not be very readily consumable by the user. So in the chat interface, we are just showing the first top 50, or it's just a configurable parameter. It could be top 50 or 100. And then in this view, full result set is where you can actually, if the data set is bigger, you can go there and look at the full data set. And one of the enhancements that's coming very soon is that you would also be able to go here and download the full data set from here, and you can do filtering and as such over here.
Great. And thanks, Raj. And just it's not only the tabular data what I'll be eager to view, but also I will be eager to see some graphs as well. So let me ask to make a graph. Okay, so these are some of the graphs being generated on a fly, and also we can view the interactive graph how it looks like. So this is being automatically built by the intelligence the of the of the system. Well, let's discuss another aspect. Like let me think of like let me ask the system like show me all the important customers what I have, and let's see like what it replies back. Let me initiate a new conversation for that. So when I'm asking the questions, show all the important customers, I'm not describing like what is the criteria for a customer being important, right? And the LLM also doesn't know like what are the criterias for my enterprise for a customer being important. Okay, so as a business user, what I will do, I will validate the SQL statement where I see the system is telling like if the amount due is greater than 1000 and the average days late is greater than 7, then I'm categorizing this customer as important, right? So this is something which I don't want, or what I see it's incorrect. So we have got a couple of icons over here. Like if you like the query, you can have a thumbs up, you can click the thumbs up, and if you don't like, you can click a thumbs down. So if you are clicking a thumbs down, then it asks the business analyst to leave a feedback, because that's where the other part of the demo is, where the expert user will be looking at to the feedbacks given by the users, and will be whitelisting the queries after he reviews. So we also have got integration here, where the end user can come and give the feedbacks for the query and submit it to the system. Correct. So it can be any feedback, and this is being submitted to the backend. Okay, so that's how the chart interface works. And now my colleague Raj will be covering the other part, which is
So,
the
Vishwa, before you leave this UI, right? Let's just quickly talk about some of the things. That last thing that you covered, right, before we jump off to the expert UI interface. So, if you can scroll up a little bit, and so as you can see, right, the system Biswa asked, like, give me all the important customers, and looks like the LLM made up some criteria where it is saying, okay, where the amount due is greater than 1,000 and average days late is greater than 7 is somebody who is an important customer. Now, this may or may not be true for your organization. You might have a totally different criteria for defining who an important customer is. So that's where the fact about the trust library comes up, which Dimitri covered earlier. All these queries or important things that are custom to your organizations, those can be configured in your trust library as your trusted SQL. And then once you do that, you can use the when a business user is asking questions which are which are known to you already, those can be picked up from the trust library instead of being generated on the fly by the LLM. So this is the trust UI that Biswa is sharing now. As an expert user, you can come here and do a variety of things, like and we'll walk through that one at a time. So this is just the landing page, and it just gives an introduction to the user about what all is possible. So Biswa, if you can go to the Bootstrap tab. Right. So essentially, when you are starting off with with a blank system, we provide you with a way where where we can look at your metadata for the tables and auto generate those prompts for you, which which will kind of become your starting prompts and your trusted prompts to begin with. Now, you may or may not want to use those, but they will just be there initially, and will be generated using the metadata that you have for your schema, underlying schema. And then on the right hand side, you see there is an upload button. So if let's say the auto generated prompts are not too simplistic for your use cases, so you may not want to use them, then you can use this upload feature to upload the prompts that are more relevant or more custom to your business use case, and upload those and have SQL be generated for those prompts right at the upfront at the bootstrap stage. So you think about this, like when you're setting up the system, you either bootstrap it using auto generate, or you upload your custom prompts and then have your system be ready for, let's say, UAT for a limited amount of time, and then make sure that your trusted prompts are all good, and then you put your system in a live mode. So let's move on to the live certified tab, Vishwa. Now, in this live certified tab, all the activity that happens in the background, that what Whisper was doing on the UI, all that is recorded. And then if a user, as an expert user, you can choose to come over here and look at what the activity is going on in the system. So let's say if there is a SQL that which is being frequently used, and the only difference is that you that it there is a difference between the parameters of the SQL. Let's say I ask that, okay, what's the overdue invoices in 2024, and you ask what's the overdue invoices in 2025. So there's just a minor difference between the two queries, but essentially the underlying SQL is the same. So though in such scenarios, you can use this fast certifier to certify those SQL, and then they will become your certified SQL. But let's say if those the SQLs that are being generated are a little bit more complicated and a little bit different than what the LLM is generating, then let's go to the full certify tab. Now, over here, what you can do is you can look at the each SQL, and then either you can fail it or you can pass it. And if it is pass, obviously it becomes like your certified SQL. If you fail it, then you have the opportunity to provide your corrected SQL, and then that becomes your trusted SQL. Now, all in all, you don't really have to do this. Like if you are just wanting to trust the LLM to generate your SQL, you are welcome to do that. But as an expert in the loop, if you have time and you want to do this, you can come here and you can certify the important SQLs that your organization has. And then this last tab is very important, and it just ties back to what Viswa was showing earlier. Now, if a user leaves feedback, you actually want to look at it and you want to act on that. So this would be the place to come, where you will look at the user's feedback, and then depending on what the feedback is, you would want to certify the or pass, fail, or provide the corrected SQL, and that will become your trusted SQL going forward. So unfortunately, these two systems that we covered over here, the business UI and the trust UI that we're showing over here, are not connected at the moment. So we cannot show the full loop, as in like when a user submits feedback, how it shows up over here and how it can be certified. But essentially, that's the flow. And then lastly, if you go to this ops folder, or at all points in time, you have full visibility into what is going on in your system and how the users are interacting with the business UI. So this provides you with the full log of the activity in the system, and to the extent like each main prompt and the follow-up prompts are logged over here, and you can see the correct actual sequence in which the prompts went on the business UI. And this gives you very good visibility into what is going on in your live system. And then you can also see which prompts and SQLs are popular and that needs to be that can be certified going forward. And then if you go quickly over to the metrics tab, Vishwa. So again, a bunch of metrics are provided over here, like what is the state of your trust library and the size of your trust library. And then again, if you go to the next tab, the on user metrics, you can see the number of prompts and the number of the trust level of the each query, and as such. So essentially, we provide you with a very detailed view of how your system is looking and how it is maturing over time as your users are interacting with the system, and the business or this expert user is actually working in the background in certifying those sequels. Now, one piece that Dimitri covered briefly was the fine-tuning aspect of it. Now, with all these activity being logged, we have a very good data set that we can use to fine-tune the model, and um, we don't have this in this demo over here currently, but essentially we have an automated workflow where all the user activity can be used to feed into the fine tuning of the model, and then in an automated way we can swap out the currently deployed model with the fine-tuned model, and then have that be available as the system is maturing. Yeah, this is all we had to cover in terms of our demo. I'll pass it back to Whisper and Dimitri for any last comments.
Thanks, Raj, and thanks, Vishwa. So I see there's a number of questions here in the chat. Scott, did you want to maybe read
I
the
was just
question
going to
and then
jump in and ask.
we can address those. Yeah, go through them.
Sure. If you want to go up to the top, the first question was about real-time data. So is there real-time data? Is this real-time data or training data from the ERP? So if the user enters new data, will it query immediately reflect it?
Yeah, so let me just by saying that there are two best practices that we see when customers choose to deploy. One option, and again, there's no right or wrong. It really depends on on your use case, and even more so on your enterprise data strategy. So one option is to deploy Oracle AS data directly against, let's say, your JD Edwards runs on Oracle 19c database. So you can deploy directly against that instance of the 19c database, in which case AS data sees all the data that it comes into that gets stored into the database in real time or near real time the moment that application hits commit or applies commit to the database. That data is available and it can be retrieved by your conversational analytics through Oracle as data platform. That's one option. There are pros and cons for doing it this way. Another option where we see customers is they would have a data warehouse where they're taking their transactional data, let's say from EBS, and they're moving it into the warehouse. By doing so, they're also transforming this data. They're doing some ETL. There could be some aggregation. It's probably only the subset of the data. So you're moving from a transactional view of the data to more analytical view of the data. In which case, it depends on the frequency of your ETL pipeline. So if you're going to consume the data from a warehouse that sits downstream from your JD Edwards instance, the data is available, but the frequency depends on how often you load new data into that warehouse. And again, these are two kind of architectural patterns. There are pros and cons for each one of those two.
So I'm going to come back to Susan's. The next one was about access and security. So with JD Edwards, so if the logged in user doesn't have permission to view the account ledger, for example, in a JD Edwards table, will Ask Data block access to it? Is it possible for Ask Data to respect the JD security settings based on the user's login?
So that's something that we get a lot. The security obviously is paramount, and we ensure that we provide data access controls and policies within Oracle AS Data. Now, one thing for folks to realize is that we do not go through the application tier. So Oracle AS Data has been designed to be data source and application agnostic, meaning that we don't go call some API that is in the application tier. Instead, we go directly against the database. So if you have your security policies defined at the user level within the application itself, that is not visible to Oracle AS Data. So what we do is we ensure that we apply security policies directly against data stored inside of the database. We can go into details maybe on a separate call, but there is a way for you to enforce data access policies, and you should. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you have a user policy defined inside of the application, those policies do not, security policies do not natively apply to what we do within Ask Data Platform.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And then another one about the naming. So on the SQL displayed back to the user-friendly names are appearing. Where does the translation from JD alias to these friendly names come from?
And this is where Vishwan and Raj jump in, because I know you guys worked on setting this up. Well, one thing I'll say is between so when as data gets deployed, there's a small exercise of taking the metadata, right? So in this case, it's that table F0911, whatever that means, taking that metadata and actually providing some natural language description for what this table actually represents. Right, because large language model cannot just look at 0911, 0912, and whatever random number that is, and figure out what is the meaning of the data inside those tables. So in other words, we go through a small exercise, very lightweight, to say, well, table F0911 has, I don't know, invoices data, and within this table we have, let's say, 15 columns C1, C2, C3, C15. Each one of those columns, you just give it a few words, a few sentence descriptions of what that column represents. That's how the model starts understanding not only the data model itself, but also the contextually understands the semantic meaning of that data.
So it's pulling, you said also metadata, is that's already in like JD Edwards, or that's something that they would set up with Ask Data?
So we would pull, think of this as we would pull the DDO, which is essentially the description of the tables and the fields. That DDL would have the physical database, the physical schema, table, and column names, and they would, or we would append an English sentence to say this is the meaning of this table.
Yeah, and it's a one-time activity, just defining the meta glossary, like as Dimitri said, and we need to give some of the human readable definitions to each and every columns if they are completely like if the name starts like E1023 or something. Like if it is something like the employee ID, then the LLM has the capability to understand it. Yeah.
Okay, that's all the questions we had in the chat so far. Any others? We got a couple more minutes we can go through if anybody has any. Or I don't know if you guys need anything else to close with after the demo, we can go through that while we wait.
So maybe let me just share. I'll come back to the first question in terms of how data makes its way into Ask Data Platform. So let's see here. You should be able to see my screen, right? Okay, all right. So let's start with this. We don't need to go through every single box. So everything inside of the red box is the footprint. It's kind of under the under the hood view of the different services that make Oracle Ask Data. So in other words, when Ask Data is deployed, all these services get stood up. It's super simple. Everything is automated through Terraform. We run a single script, and basically all these instances are spun up inside of your Oracle Cloud tenancy. Now, but where I want to focus now is upstream on the left-hand side. So as I was saying, there are two ways how customers would deploy Oracle as data next to their enterprise data source. So in this case, you can think of this being your application, 19C, which underpins, let's say your instance of JD Edwards. And essentially, in this case, this is a direct connection from Oracle as data, the NL to SQL engine, into 19C instance. So there are a couple benefits of doing it this way. First of all, every write to the database, every time that application posts an update to the database, that data is immediately available. So you can have real-time or near real-time insights coming back from that source database through the conversational aspect that we just saw from Bishwa and Raj, which is definitely beneficial. On the flip side, it exposes you to some complexity because the schema inside JD Edwards, the transactional schema inside JD Edwards is rather complex. So it does require a little bit more thinking upfront in terms of how to ensure that all that complexity can be properly handled by the LLM. It requires those annotations, so you can take table name, whatever that 0911 means, column names, which may not be very descriptive, and providing annotations to do that, right? So a little bit more complexity in terms of upfront implementation, but it does give you the benefit of being able to access your transactional data in near real time. So that's one way how customers choose to deploy as data. The other way, and again, this largely depends on your existing enterprise data strategy, is you may have a single application or multiple applications. So let me give you an example. You may have JD Edwards running in one part of your organization. You may have EBS or SAP or Salesforce or Workday, many different applications, not necessarily even all coming from Oracle. And you may already have ETL pipelines that are moving these data from the application silos into an enterprise data warehouse. From an enterprise data warehouse perspective, our Oracle, our flagship product is Autonomous Data Warehouse, or ADW. But as I said in the beginning, we actually support any flavor of SQL or many flavors of SQL. So it could be a warehouse based on Snowflake, based on Teradata, based on Postgre, based on MySQL or MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that we can adapt to your existing data landscape. And if you've already chosen to build your data integration and ETL pipelines from application silos, database application silos, into a centralized enterprise data warehouse, you can have Oracle as data, which is the red box on the right-hand side, tied into your data warehouse, in which case it usually means that your data has already been cleansed, aggregated. You probably have less joins because you've gone from a transactional view of the data into more analytical tables, so fewer tables, wider tables, which makes it easier for large language model to understand the data, understand the meaning, the context of the data. Tends to require less annotations upfront. And then you already probably have your data domains structured inside of the warehouse. So again, it becomes a little bit better tailored towards enterprise analytics and this kind of conversational AI applications. So in either case, this really comes down to your specific requirements, your specific business users, the type of questions that they want to be asking, as well as your existing data landscape and data architecture, whether you're going to go pull directly from the source database, the application source, like the way you have it here, or whether you would want to go and consolidate into the warehouse and then have as data sit on top of that data warehouse. Both options are available. I think this is more of a case-by-case discussion. All right, with that, happy to take any additional questions, or we can give folks a break before the next call.